What's up? This is EJ Stewart.
What if I drop 40 days, 40 nights?
One, you can't do it.
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm gonna keep it 100 with you.
Every morning, every night, for 40 days.
Going to be a long 40 days this year.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days, 40 nights.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
For 40 days. If I can do that, then everything will be okay.
You're the guy who can't finish a sandwich. You think you can go 40 days? This isn't normal!
Oh, you're wrong, brother. I'm gonna go the distance.
Let's go! Go is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. 40 days, 40 nights. We're up to night 12 on this journey I'm on, where I'm doing 2 live streams per day, one beginning at 8 a.m. We did that one earlier. Now we're here in the evening doing one at 6 p.m. Hence 40 days, 40 days to name. I'm the guy, again, EJ Stewart. You're rocking with me here on New Generation Media, of course, streaming live on New Generation Media's YouTube channel. Also streaming live on X. Shout out to the folks following me there on X. And on Instagram, Action EJ. This is going to be a dandy of a show today. We have not one, but 2 phenomenal guests. Coming up a little later in the show at 6:45, we will have my guy from WFAN, Mike Fliegelman, coming on to talk about the Jets and their coaching fiasco, because they have now, after we talked about it earlier today, learning that apparently Frank Reich was someone that was going to be eyed to potentially be the new play caller, but not necessarily the offensive coordinator, because the Jets currently have an offensive coordinator, Tanner Engstrand. Well, now they don't have an offensive coordinator anymore, because hours later we learned that Tanner Engstrand and the Jets were indeed parting ways. So Engstrand is out. Now the Jets begin an offensive coordinator search, while they're also still searching for a defensive coordinator as well. So that's a massive mess. I'll have all my thoughts on that. And we'll have Mike Fliegelman, who is a diehard Jets fan, who follows the Jets as closely as anybody. And he's the guy you want to hear when it comes to Jets commentary. So I couldn't think of anybody better to have on this day. The Jets once again spin their wheels and trying to figure out how to get this thing going in the right direction. Tanner Engstrand out. So we'll have Mike Fliegelman on the show from WFAN at 6:45. And this one is a close one to me. This one means a lot. This one, it has me really excited, because as you guys know, many of you guys who have been following me on these streams, watching me on various different platforms, a lot of you, came from the Maggie and Perloff show. A lot of you guys are our favorite weedos and coffee drinkers that have been supporting this show. I really appreciate you guys supporting me in my career, and I cannot thank enough the platform that was offered to me by both Maggie Gray and Andrew Perloff, 2 of my now close friends, not just in the industry, but now in life. And I'm really excited about the opportunity we have today, because the Bills also made some big news. They hired a new head coach in one Joe Brady. He was a guy who was already there. He was their offensive coordinator, so they're promoting him up to head coach. And I could not think of anyone better also to join me to talk about a Bills major shift than one Maggie Gray. So Maggie Gray from the Maggie and Perloff show will be live here on 40 days and 40 nights, coming to you at 6:15. So we'll have 2 guests. We'll be talking Bills with Maggie Gray at 6:15. We'll be talking Jets with my guy Mike Fliegelman at around 6:45. And then we got plenty of other stuff to get to, man, because this was a pretty busy day, and I'm trying to get as much stuff as I can. But we will discuss also the big news in college football as well. Duke and Darian Mensah have come to an agreement. They have settled their lawsuit. So now Darian Mensah is free to transfer to any school that he likes. And sure enough, he already showed up earlier today at the University of Miami on campus, having his in-person visit. And it seems like all but a sure thing that Darian Mensah will eventually sign with the Miami Hurricanes. But this is college football. And if you know anything about college football, there are no sure things. But nonetheless, we will break down just how Duke and Darian came to this settlement, and then we'll also talk about what the ramifications are for college football in general now that this thing has been put to bed, and what it now means potentially for the Miami Hurricanes if they're able to snag arguably the top QB in this transfer class in Darian Mensah. So we'll talk about that, and then we got some interesting news on the hip hop front. The last time I talked about J. Cole, I got cursed out on Instagram by someone from Dreamville. I'm hoping that doesn't happen again. But we will talk some Cole because we know that we have an album coming out, The Fall Off. Everyone's super excited about that. That's coming out next week. But maybe there's music coming today. It seems like there's some smoke and maybe there's some fire that Cole may be dropping something prior to The Fall Off. And we'll give you all the details on that. And then finally as well, I like to end with some humor and some fun stuff. And I'm going to bring in a guy, not live of course, but we're going to play some sound from someone that hasn't necessarily been someone I root for or someone that I support really in any way. But they told a hilarious story on LeBron James's podcast that got a great laugh out of me. And sometimes just got to hand it to somebody when they're charming, they're funny, and they say funny stuff. And Tyrese Halliburton has some interesting comments regarding his experience on Team USA when he was on the Mind the Game podcast. So we'll play that sound towards the end of the show. So this is going to be a fun one, man. We have a lot of stuff to get to, man. Again, this is 40 Days, 40 Nights hosted by your boy, EJ Stewart. Of course, as I say with every show I do, of course, support the channel. New Generation Media is where we're live on YouTube. Shout out to the folks watching on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment on the video, do whatever you got to do to give us as much support as possible. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. And of course, we're streaming live again, like I said, on X, EJ_Stewart, where you can find me there. Make sure you follow me on X. And of course, Action EJ on Instagram and on TikTok as well. And every podcast gets posted up on our podcast channel, New Generation Podcast Network, is where you can find these episodes from the audio version wherever you get your podcast. So let's get the ball rolling, man. We'll have Maggie in a few minutes, but first let's start talking about this Bills situation. So the Buffalo Bills, they have promoted offensive coordinator Joe Brady to become their next head coach. He is signed or he may have signed already, a 5-year deal to be elevated from offensive coordinator to Bills head coach. Brady, of course, is not unfamiliar to these parts when it comes to the Bills. He was their offensive coordinator for the last 2 years. Fully, of course, he started as he took over as OC in 2023 when the team fired Ken Dorsey mid-season. He took over and finished the rest of that year and then has remained as offensive coordinator both in 2024 and 2025. They did have one of the best offenses in the NFL this past season. They were number 4 overall in total offense this year. They were first in rushing offense this year. So Joe Brady remains with the Buffalo Bills. He now becomes their head coach. And the reporting that we're getting from Jordan Schultz is that the Bills are promoting him after they were really impressed through the interview process. Apparently, the Bills were impressed by the fact that Joe Brady really presented himself as a potential CEO-type head coach. And that portion of the interview and his vision for the team is one that really excited them and perhaps won them over. The Bills were also reportedly impressed with Brady's approach to the quote-unquote importance of alignment between coaching and player personnel. Listen, the Bills promoting Joe Brady to me was very obviously the safest thing they could do. He was there. He's been running an offense that's been more than functional. It's been very effective. So it's not crazy to say let's promote the guy who's been doing a good job with the offense and keep him around. We don't want to lose anything on offense given we have the reigning MVP right now. We have a franchise quarterback, and we don't want to upset the apple cart from that regard. That would make sense. The problem becomes when you listen to what this ownership group said and what this front office said about what the issues were with this team. Because if you'll remember, it was the owner, Terry Pagula, who was sitting there in the press conference talking about how I don't know what was going to happen, but I looked around the locker room and I saw everybody sad, and I realized that we could do better, that something needed to change. In fact, I want to play this sound for you. I want you to remember this was Terry Pagula when he talked about why he was firing one Sean McDermott.
I saw the pain in Josh's face at his presser, and I felt his pain. I know we can do better, and I know we will get better.
So you just kept the guy that was that was already there? See, that's the thing about this that is so ridiculous to me. Is again keeping the offense intact given the success they had. That's not something I think is crazy. But when you make the case that Terry Pegula made sitting at that press conference saying that we have hit a wall, we have not been able to get over this hump, and I'm looking at this team, looking at how sad they are, realizing that we have failed them and they deserve better. So I'm going to get the guy who's had a hand in the last 3 years of failure. Brady was there for all of the postseason failures the Bills have had. All the struggles that they have had. He was the guy calling the plays. He was in all of this. And it just speaks to the level of BS that was coming out of Terry Pegula's mouth when he spoke last week, when he was talking about this idea that they needed this big change simply because for the sake of change. Just that, they tried their best, they hit a wall, and now it's time to do things differently. Nothing really is probably going to be done very different from the offensive standpoint. So now you're saying, okay, we're not really making any major changes offensively. I don't think Joe Brady is going to come in and say, I have a new different philosophy how to call a game now that he's the head coach. I would highly doubt that. I know there was this conversation about, is he potentially going to be a CEO type head coach? I want to get to that in a second. But if that is the case, again, he's still going to probably still call the plays. So I don't expect that to be something that's going to change much in terms of the feel for the team, the idea that you need a new voice. The offense is having the same voice. What you're essentially saying is, okay, we're only going to make change, but only on one side of the ball. And you really end up kind of pointing to the defense saying, you guys are the ones that weren't pulling your weight. You guys were the ones, the reason why we didn't make the playoff, go further in the playoffs. And you're the reason why we didn't go to a Super Bowl. That's what you're telling your team. That's what you're telling your fan base. And I think the fans in Buffalo are smart to realize that it's a lot more complicated than that. The defense has always been pretty good. Not elite, not anything crazy, but they've been a pretty good defense. They have not been this over-the-top, crazy, dominant defense, but they've been good. They also have not had superstar talent. So it's hard for me to look at the Bills and say what is wrong with them and say, if I'm changing the coach, I'm only blaming one half of the side of the one half of the football, one half of the field. Offense, we're gonna keep that totally intact. Nothing's wrong. Even though I just watched a game where your quarterback was throwing the ball all over the yard and he threw 4 interceptions. He had 4 turnovers through. I had 2 interceptions in that game. That part of it is the part that is difficult for me to understand. So what is the plan for the Bills? What is going to change next year? That is my question that I still don't know. I was told when Terry Pegula went to the mic and said, you know what? I looked at Josh Allen's sad face and realized we could do better. You didn't do any better. You kept the same offense. There's nothing that's changing on that side of the ball. So where is this better going to come from? You're going to get some high-end defensive coordinator? Where are you going to find that guy? I mean, besides the Jets, who we'll get to a little bit later, everyone else has pretty much found all the top coordinators, all the top defensive minds. These guys are all getting hired. Unless you're going to maybe hire one of these guys that you didn't pick. Out of the guys that were left, does Anthony Weaver want to come over? I don't know if Lou Anarumo, he's not going to leave the Colts, I don't think, to come over. So where are you finding a new defense? So this idea, this facade that was sold by Terry Pegula that great change was needed. No, what happened was their egos were bruised. They had a head coach who had a lot of flaws. I'm not the biggest Sean McDermott fan, but they had a head coach who had a ton of flaws, who came in and in a meeting a month and a half ago, wherever it was, told them, this team ain't all that great. It's going to be tough for us to get to a Super Bowl with this roster. And they got annoyed. And it's not surprising that I read the Jordan Schultz tweet, and the one thing that it said that impressed them was the synergy between player personnel and the coaching staff and them being on the same page. We now know what this was about. Brandon Beane and Pegula not feeling comfortable with the idea that their head coach didn't believe in them and the roster he was giving them. So they wanted a guy who's going to be a yes man, a guy who's going to be able to take whatever they're giving them and find a way to win without complaining. And that's what they got, because Joe Brady's not going to complain. He's happy he's still got a job. So we'll see what happens in terms of Buffalo. I've said before, I think if you're an AFC team looking at that situation up there, I would say, oh my gosh, there is an opportunity there. That is a team that looks like they left the adult out of the room. He's now gone. Now only the children are running the show. And this hire, after all the talk of we need great change to ensure that we don't fail our players again, and then you just promote the guy who's been there for the last 3 years of failure. How does that make any sense? So I don't understand it, But I want to get the perspective of someone who absolutely understands Bills football, absolutely understands Western New York and upstate New York, and understands this whole situation as good as anybody. And I know people are going to really be excited about this because I teased it earlier. But we will indeed have coming up to the stage Maggie Gray.
Salute. Wait, EJ, after all that, I want to go crawl in a hole and die, man. You're giving me no hope whatsoever about the Bills situation, as if it isn't bad enough. Yeah, the secret's out, man. This was not actually a coaching search. Shocker. They probably knew this whole time. Brandon Beane knew, because all GMs keep a backup plan, right? They all keep a backup plan. And it looked for a second like the Bills really didn't have one. And then, of course, when it's Brady, it's like, aha, this is what it was all the time. And here's the thing about it. The offense was pretty damn good with Brady. You know that I was not a big Ken Dorsey fan. I thought I was going to love Ken Dorsey, your guy from Miami.
Yep.
I thought I was going to love Ken Dorsey, and then he got the job, and I absolutely despise this dude. So when he was shown the door, there was only one way to go but up. Joe Brady did that. He's really mastered, utilizing Josh and the run game, which I talk about all the time, in front of the camera, behind the camera.
Yep.
Like, I'm annoyed about that. But it worked, and the offense wasn't the problem. I'm glad they're not going to keep the same defensive coordinator. You can't just run
Right.
Sean McDermott's system. It looks like they're going to be targeting Jim Leonard, someone, again, who you're familiar with from his
Yep.
days with the Jets. I know Bart Scott, my former co-host, loved Jim Leonard. Like, I don't know if he's going to be a great coach, but at least they're changing that up. But I'll agree with you. Like, this is not a significant enough change to really inspire the fan base after. And I'm going to be honest, it's unfortunate that we weren't able to do our daily show as this was going on, but obviously we'll have some news about that very, very soon. But this was one of the worst ones. This is one of the worst.
Wow, that loss. And I've mentioned that on the show where we talked about these terrible losses, and I've referenced you being like, I think Maggie Gray, whenever we actually pin her down, she usually goes to 13 seconds, but usually it's like a long list of games that we go through. Really, the Denver loss. Now you're thinking about worst loss at this point in time.
Well,
why is that?
Okay, so 13 seconds game, yes, like Mount Rushmore. This one doesn't have a nickname yet, but it should. And I'll tell you why this one was so bad. First of all, you were the better team. I think that. And they lost. Okay. They blew an opportunity with no Mahomes, no Lamar Jackson, no Joe Burrow. That will haunt them for sure until they win, if they ever win. I'm going to be honest, EJ. This loss, it's almost like they lost twice. When you find out after the game that Bo Nix's ankle is broken. So even though Denver was in that game against New England, like, you just know they're screwed. Like,
the end of the road's coming for Denver, exactly.
And then, so you're watching this AFC Championship game that's being played in the second half in, like, an out-of-nowhere, like, squall, and it just looks so bad. It just looks so bad. And I honestly think, like I did the 13 seconds year, when they lost to Kansas City that year, I think they would beat the NFC team. Like, I think they would have beaten Seattle. I really do. And so, or I think they would have beaten the Rams. So this one stings. And again, it's almost like you lost twice because of, like, really, the Patriots, like, really, they're fine. They're not a great team. Let's call it what it is.
Oh yeah,
they are not a great team.
Yeah, and I mentioned that, I said this on Maggie and Perloff's show, that I felt like whoever was coming out of the AFC was probably going to get their heads cracked in. And then you guys said, what about Buffalo? I said, well, that's probably the one team I would maybe pause on that. But I look at what the NFC playoffs looked like and watch that AFC Championship game, and I feel very good about the Seahawks rolling the Patriots in a couple of weeks. So that's an interesting thought. I never thought of it that way. The fact that the Bills, not only did they lose this heartbreaking game, but the team that they lost to had no real shot to ever do anything. So therefore, it's almost like it's a waste. You didn't even lose to a team that had a chance to really do anything. You're sitting back and saying, well, what could have been if we would have just, I guess, played better or had some breaks go your way.
Listen, I mean, it was getting real old to lose to Mahomes. I mean, you lose to him 4 times in the playoffs. Like, all right, got it. But you lose to Patrick Mahomes as a fan. I'm not saying as a player, but as a fan, there's a part of you that's like, well, all right, goddamn, like
Yeah.
it's Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid. No one else is beating them except for the Eagles finally. Like they were, I guess Tampa, but like they're so good. They're in their era. And yeah, it's heartbreaking. But as a fan, there's almost like there is a little nobility, I guess, to losing to
Right.
Mahomes, who's going to be remembered as the greatest quarterback of this era. But not to Bo Nix and not to Sean Payton, who wasn't even coaching a good game and did not coach a good AFC championship game. Like the
No.
boogeyman, you've called that. The boogeyman of Sean Payton, like that doesn't exist anymore. But anyway, and here's the other thing. Your thought about the NFC, like whoever, was going to win that game is going to win the Super Bowl. Except for the big wild card, there still is a Sam Darnold like possibility that he goes out and completely just implodes. Like
That's the only
he
thing
played
left.
So
Yeah.
well, only thing left. But he played so well in the NFC Championship game. I was like, good God, who is this guy? But he could totally blow it in the Super Bowl.
Maggie Gray joins me here, Maggie and Perloff Show. So excited to have her here with me talking to Buffalo Bills, hiring Joe Brady. The other aspect about this too, because what I've heard from Bills Nation and heard from you has been this idea that, well, if anything happens bad with this team, at least it may be good that we move on from Sean McDermott. That at least that's the saving grace. That you know what, you guys have had these Bills struggles midseason. A lot of times, you're like, you know what, let's just miss the playoffs. Let's just struggle the rest of the way because at least then we'll fire our head coach. Eventually, you finally got there through another tough playoff loss. But I feel like that attitude has completely disappeared from Bills Mafia. That idea that, well, if we could just find a way to lose in a way that will get us to get rid of this coach, then we'll be excited. It almost felt like as soon as that happened and then Brandon Beane and Terry Pagula opened their mouths, all that feeling went away. Do you also have this feeling of concern about those guys now running the show with this thing, now that I guess the guy that was in their way apparently is gone?
Yeah, I think this happens sometimes. It's I've seen it before. I'm trying to remember who it was. I feel like something's telling me like this happened with the Browns at one point or something. But you fire a guy, everyone hates him. Fan base wants him out, needs a new voice, can't win the big one with him, all that. And then you actually fire him, and everyone's like, well, wait a minute. Wait, you weren't supposed to fire the... There's like a little bit of regret. I remember there was like a Diana Rossetti tweet. She was like, I didn't think you guys loved this dude so much. And all of a sudden, because there was like an outright... Now I can't remember who it was. But anyway, besides the point. This is what I think happened here. Bills obviously need a different voice. Mm-hmm. To be fair, you could have fired Sean McDermott just for never being able to beat Andy Reid in the playoffs. Like, again, how much more evidence do you need besides 4 times to lose them in the postseason? That's insane. But what I think has Bills fans really pissed off was that game. Was that the game to fire Sean McDermott after? So I think there's a recency about it where, you feel like you got totally hosed on a couple calls at the end. You feel like, there was an injustice. And so did the coach's head deserve to roll after that specific game? I think that's part of it. And then those two guys going up and do the press conference, listen, it was terrible. Like, there's no way around it. But if we just distilled it down into what you needed to take away from that, which is A, they needed a new voice. The locker room was devastated. I think that does play a factor in the decision. That's fine. He owns the team. He's seen them after all these losses. And if this felt different for a variety of reasons, I'm okay with that being a data point, not the data point, but a data point. They needed a change. And Terry Pagula really is a behind-the-scenes guy. Like, he's got the charisma of a dish rag. He does it, but he's not trying to be Jerry Jones. He's not trying to be Mark Cuban. He pops his head out every now and again. It's very sparing. But I think what people took from that is he's a doofus and Brandon Beane is a backstabber. And that's, again, where I feel like the disconnect with the fan base. Because I think if you actually gave... Now, right? I think I froze. I think most people thought coach and GM both should have gone.
Got it.
Coaching wasn't good enough. Roster wasn't good enough. Why does one guy get to stay and on top of that get a promotion and then the other guy's got to go? Well, as it turns out, the owner really didn't have the stomach, I don't think, to do a house cleaning. And that's even further evidence now by Joe Brady getting the job because they went with the dude in the building. Like, they interviewed a bunch of those guys. I saw the whole list of names. There wasn't one guy on that list who had a real shot, in my opinion, including Brian Daboll. And I would have thrown the bank at Tomlin and made him say no to me, and I bet they didn't even call. Because I think Brandon Beane, a little to what you were saying right before I came on, he doesn't want to be in a I don't know, like a perception battle, or, you know, he doesn't want to be welcoming in a big personality and someone who's had a lot of success, and now all of a sudden he's going to be minimized. Like, he hired a guy who's going to work under him. That's very obvious.
Yeah, to me, he got promoted as president of football operations. He's wielding that title with an iron fist at this point. That's how I see this. Like, they didn't keep him as general manager. He's now elevated to an even newer position. So if you brought in someone like a Tomlin, I saw, you know, Craig Carton was mentioning bring in someone maybe like Belichick. There's no way that title will mean anything. No one's going to look at Brandon Beane and say, oh, you're the guy that's actually running this show. No, we're going to say it's going to be Tomlin, it's going to be Belichick, or whoever that was going to be. And that's, of course, where we stand now. But now you got Joe Brady, a guy who's never been a head coach before, a guy who actually, by some measure, has kind of ran away from that kind of role. Like, colleges have wanted him, and he's shied away because apparently he doesn't like recruiting. When he got to LSU, he actually wasn't the offensive coordinator, but he was calling the plays. Like, he's an interesting cat, which is why I found the aspect of the CEO coach thing being the quote unquote difference in this, because it seems like that's the aspect of the job he always seems to hate. Like, anytime they've talked about who he is as a person or his personality or who he is as a coach, it seems like all the other stuff are the things that he dislikes, and he just wants to sit in that booth and call the plays. Now he's gonna have to do a lot more, but apparently it seems like he wowed him in that. Are you in any way concerned that he's gonna be able to step up to that plate?
Definitely. Yes. 100%. Yes. I'm worried about everything. You know me. You know that I'm worried about this. But can I just offer one thing?
Yeah.
What this also signifies to me. This is a team whose head coach is an afterthought. And to be honest, it was when McDermott was there. How many Coach of the Year votes was he getting? 0. This is Josh Allen's team. And, you know, he's the face of the franchise. The coach is secondary to that. And in that way, maybe it works. Maybe it works. Because it seems like Josh is comfortable with that. You know, he takes on the responsibility of being in a small market, you know, being the guy. You know, everything lives and dies with him, not just because of who he is, but how he plays. And he's the franchise. So to me, like, whether the coach can, like, live up to it, I just think as long as you've got Josh and he's in your corner and he's the one who co-signed on this, or he's the one who signed on it, quite frankly, then I think that the rest of the team will fall in. But obviously he's got to nail this defensive coordinator hire, because the defense is the problem. Whether you think it's personnel or whether you think it's scheme or what have you, the defense is what's been letting them down. Ironically, the playoffs, they actually were pretty good. But, you know, pretty good. But the defense needs a revamp big time.
Maggie Gray, it's great to see you. I know you mentioned that you're obviously it was always such a fun time working on the Infinity Sports Network, doing the Maggie and Perloff show on there. First of all, I know there's been a lot of wheel and coffee drinkers that have been wondering where you guys have been. Excited to see you guys, or see you whenever an update's going to be. You want to just let people know quickly, just like how you been, what's life been like since the whole situation, and just how you feeling right now.
Well, everyone saw that Bills game against Denver, so I've been terrible. No, everything's been good. You know, it turns out that you actually do need to sleep a little as a human being. That, I'm sure you found that out as well.
Oh, yes.
So that's been kind of cool. I'm really excited about what we have coming up, even though I can't say anything about it right now. But it's all falling into place very nicely. So I'm excited about that. So soon, everybody. I know I said that with DA. We're right there. It's going to happen. And we're excited to announce that when we can. And I'm excited for you, EJ. This is a big lift, dude. 40, doing 2 podcasts a day, and you're doing fan, and you're doing
Yep.
other stuff. Like,
Yep.
what have you learned about yourself over the last couple of weeks?
Whew, what have I learned about myself? I've learned that I'm probably not all up there when it comes to because of just my thoughts and what I can and cannot do. I'm also a dog dad, and there's responsibilities that come with that as well that I didn't think would be as much of a factor with this, but now trying to do 2 live streams a day, I'm realizing, oh, yeah, that's a little bit of an issue. Lita has to walk. Lita's barking in the background while I'm live. Like, there's all these different things. She just came in, barged in the door, and I'm like, hey, I thought I closed that door. Now I can't get up because I'm live, so I gotta hope she just walks out. So there's part of me is like, maybe I'm not all up there, that I've actually tried to do this. But I have learned that, one thing I have learned is that, again, the community that was built with Maggie and Perloff has been super supportive, and I can't thank you enough for that, and Perloff enough for that. And they've showed me great love, and I know when people watching the stream and then people see these videos out, they're gonna be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this happened!" So I'm really excited about that. But it's been so much fun. It's been so much fun to do this whole live stream situation.
I mean, you're doing a great job. Lita barking now is just like in my, like, it's white noise to me.
Yep.
Like, I've heard it so much, it doesn't matter. I couldn't even hear it. But Perloff's at the Senior Bowl, so we're gonna get some stories from him soon. So that will be fun. He's down there doing some reporting for other stuff. But can we quickly, just for a second,
Yes.
because there are times when we got a little petty on the show.
Yep.
And we had a couple segments that made fun of some people, all in good, all just,
of course,
S's and G's, all in good fun. As the Tar Heel turns, Bill Belichick is not getting into the Hall of Fame on the first ballot.
He's not.
And I find that just like karma is just a bitch, as they say. It really is. Because, sorry, I don't know if I can swear here, but
go ahead. It's all good.
It's the only thing I could think of when I just saw that headline right before I came on with you. I'm like, wow, they really kept him out. And
Yep.
I'm assuming it's for Spygate, like that's, or the idea that he's not as good without Brady, like, has really taken hold of people, and that's not just like a media thing or a fan thing. That's like real. But I think it's about the cheating. And if it is about the cheating, I'm glad he's got to sit a year out, because he kept cheating and he kept doing it.
Yep.
We all know he kept doing it, and whether it helped him 1%, 2%, 5%, 25%, whatever it was, the NFL is like razor thin. And I just found that, like, wow, karma, man, crazy.
Well, he is somebody who, if there's anything he does care about, he does care about legacy, history of the league, and kind of like perception of the historical context of things. This is probably one of the worst days of his life. Like, I think today, like this day, like realizing all that he accomplished, all the Super Bowl rings, despite all the scandals, I think he felt like, given what he feels like he gave back to the game, that he was not honored as a first ballot Hall of Famer. It is killing him. There are things being thrown in a Chapel Hill office right now and that some intern or some staffer is having to clean up, because I know he's having an absolutely rough day. And I do think it was people sending a message. And it could be multiple things. Like you mentioned Spygate. I still think about Kraft. And I still think about, did Kraft, really coax some of these people who were voting and being like, hey, man, like, you remember how much of a jerk he was? Remember all the stuff he did? Like, you really going to put him in here after everything he's done? I think that he had so many enemies at this point. You could point to anything as to why he's not in. But it is stunning that someone that great and that accomplished is not in. But cheating, Kraft beef, all of it in the stew for why he is no longer, not yet, a Hall of Famer.
Man, just goes to show you got to treat people nicely, man. You got to treat people nicely.
Yeah.
It goes a long way. No one told Bill.
Yes. Well, Maggie, it was so great to have you. I'm really excited for what you got coming up next. Really excited for you guys to announce that. That's going to be super fun. I know the Widows and Coffee Drinkers are really waiting on bated ear for that. So I'm really happy to have that coming up soon. And I'm really happy to have you on it. I do greatly appreciate you.
EJ, you are doing yeoman's work over here, my friend. You are doing, this is not a small thing that you're doing, to be doing this twice a day. You're doing a great job, and when we have the news, we will come on 40 days, 40 nights, and we will announce it to everybody.
That's what I want to hear. I'm so excited about that, Maggie. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon.
See you, Jay. Bye. Say hi to everyone. Andrea Alito.
Yes, I will. Oh, that's awesome. Maggie Gray from Maggie and Perloff Show joining me here live on 40 Days and 40 Nights. And listen, just to get it out in the open, you heard it from the horse. Well, I'm not gonna say the horse's mouth. You heard it from the source, themselves, or half the source at least, right? All the people hitting me up. What's going on, Maggie and Perloff? What's going on, Maggie and Perloff? I say, listen. When they're ready to announce whatever they're working on, they will announce it. And like Maggie's been saying and Perloff's been saying, pay attention to the all the platforms that they're on, social media, and they will have something eventually. But you got to just be patient and let them know. And people have come on to my stream, commenting over here, being like, "Oh, what's going on, Maggie and Perloff?" I'm like, "Hey, just again, I'm gonna keep saying what I keep saying." Give it a couple, just give it some time, and eventually you'll be able to see what's going to happen. It was so great to have Maggie on. I mean, Maggie coming in, absolutely bringing the heat as she always does. Interesting perspective. I did not expect her to say that loss to the Broncos was the worst of them all, of all the Bills' losses. That's pretty stunning to me. I mean, I'm not a Bills fan, so who am I to say? I still feel like 13 seconds is as bad as it gets. I still feel like wide right also has got to be about as bad as it gets. But the thought process was interesting. It's the idea that you lost to a team that had no chance to win a Super Bowl because the guy broke his ankle on the last play of the game. And then you played a team that in the game, it seemed like you were the more talented team. Your own errors, referee, potential issues. I didn't have a problem with the Brandon Cooks call, but a lot of Bills fans did. I know Maggie sure as hell did. So that being the tint to this, and then also this was a playoff with no Mahomes, no Lamar Jackson, no Joe Burrow, and that this was the one that you get bounced in the division around. It makes sense. I can't say it doesn't make sense, but man, I'm just thinking about all those crazy Bills losses they've had over the course of all those years, and I'm surprised that this one would be the worst. But to the players, it seemed like it was. I mean, when we played the sound of Terry Pagula just a couple of minutes ago from last week when he said that, I looked at the players, I looked at their eyes, and I looked how devastated they were, and I realized we need to change. I don't know how big a change is to just elevate your offensive coordinator to head coach, but that is the move that they're making. I have great concerns that they are in a situation where the adult in the room is gone, and now it's Brandon Beane's show and Terry Pagula's show, and good luck with that, because everything I hear from them, I don't feel comfortable with that at all, man. So we got to move on, though. We got to talk about the Jets here, man. So the Jets, speaking of clown shows and speaking of no adults in the room, Jets moving on from offensive coordinator Tanner Engstrand. Engstrand, of course, was in his first year as Jets offensive coordinator this past season. He came in along the staff with Aaron Glenn. And after conversations between apparently Glenn and Engstrand, they have decided to mutually part ways. So this all came really from reporting we got late last week and then over the weekend that the Jets had fired all these different staffers, many of them on the offensive side of the ball, which kind of seemed to like maybe put Engstrand in a bind, being like, what's his future if you're firing all these staffers? Then they said, no, he's still offensive coordinator. Then overnight on Sunday, I was live on the Fan when I was talking about this when Connor Hughes put the tweets out past midnight that the Jets were looking at Frank Reich to become play caller, which was bizarre because they had an offensive coordinator. Well, it turned out that they were already having conversations with Engstrand about him not calling plays but remaining on the staff. I don't know what good an offensive coordinator is who isn't calling plays and your head coach isn't calling plays and you're putting some other guy in some other position to call plays. But that was apparently what was being discussed. It seemed like the plan was to bring in a veteran play caller and then have Engstrand still around. That plan is now over because it's fired. So now Engstrand is gone. The Jets now begin an offensive coordinator search. It is January 27th. It is January 27th. The Jets season ended on January 4th. And we've had head coaches being hired, offensive coordinators being hired. We've had an entire coaching cycle essentially happen. There are only 2 head coaching jobs still available, I believe, right? Or 3, I guess, Cardinals as well. There's only 3 jobs left, and there were a ton of jobs out there. And we're getting down to like the finalists for a lot of these jobs. all these guys are hiring staffers. All these guys are hiring new OCs. Everyone's getting the ball rolling, and the Jets are just getting started. They're just beginning the idea of saying, you know what, let's actually change our entire offensive staff. We've now, because we fired the defensive coordinator midseason and fired a lot of defensive staff members, we've also fired a lot of defensive guys. We're essentially coming into this offseason with a brand new coaching staff, except for the head coach, and we're starting our offensive coordinator search on January 27th. There's no way to spin this, man. And I'll say this, and I posted it on X, it's what I firmly believe, man. I have been one of the last holdouts on the Aaron Glenn train. And I've said, listen, it's only 1 year. Things haven't gone well. We understand that. You got to give him another year. You got to give him an opportunity to really help them kind of begin the turnover of the roster to see if he can get some of the players that he wants in here. If, Muji can cook a little bit in this draft. Let's see what things look like in year 2 with Aaron Glenn. Now that he doesn't have the stench of what was left over from the Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh era. That was how I felt, and that's where I was standing. I can't do it anymore with this guy. I can't do it. There's no way you're going to tell me that starting your offensive coordinator search at on January 27th, when most of the teams that have needed head coaches, needed offensive coordinators, that they're already hiring people, that now is the right time to begin your search. And by the way, because now Tanner Engstrand is out, they can't just bring in Frank Reich like they wanted to and maybe have some sham interview with a Rooney Rule guy. They can't do that anymore. They now have to, because they're replacing an offensive coordinator and there's higher standards for coordinator hires, they have to have 2 in-person interviews with candidates of color to satisfy the Rooney Rule. So this is not going to be we fired that guy, we're just going to plug this guy in and we'll just move on. No, this is now going to be a process. We're just beginning this whole game in terms of what the Jets are going to do in terms of how to figure it out, in terms of figuring out who's going to be their offensive play caller next year. This is an utter disaster. And to me, if you told me the Jets were going to have an entire coaching staff change, it made 0 sense to bring back Aaron Glenn. The appeal of bringing back Aaron Glenn was the idea that he would have learned from a lot of the mistakes he made in year 1, and the staff would have learned from a lot of the mistakes they made in year 1, and that with a year of experience, a year of growth, and a year with these players. Well, some of these guys are going to be gone, but some of these core players are still going to be here. A year with these guys, familiarity with these guys, that would be the silver lining to why, you know what, despite how bad this year was, let's bring him in next year and let's see what he can do with a second year. All that's gone now. Now a whole new coaching staff is going to come in and get introduced to this whole new team, and they're going to bring in a whole new system, probably, at least offensively. We'll see how much changes happen on defense. So what was the point of bringing them back? All that continuity stuff is gone. You might as well just fire the head coach if this was going to happen. So this, to me, is an utter mess. I'm done. You're not going to find me defending Aaron Glenn. You're not going to find me being one of those guys that's out here trying to make a case for him. I can't. I can't do it in good faith. I'm not going to do it in good faith, man. So I'm very disappointed. I think Tanner Engstrand actually did a pretty decent job. I know the Jets were ranked 29th in offense. I know their passing offense was terrible. But I actually watched Jet football and I actually saw, I know the president said, I have concepts of a plan. I actually saw concepts of a plan watching Tanner Engstrand's offense. I saw guys get open and Justin Fields not throwing the ball. I saw a running game that were able to create holes for Breece Hall and other guys to get big runs. I saw an offense that with better players, with more complete team, with more reps, that could get somewhere. I saw nothing on the defense. I saw nothing on that side of the ball. I actually saw something on the offensive side of the ball. So the fact that they're going to be now starting from scratch, I'm done. I'm not going to be sitting here defending Aaron Glenn at this point. But enough of me yapping. I said we'd have another great guest here. This has been a fun show so far. And I want to bring in my guy, Mike Fliegelman, WFAN, to talk about the Jets and their decision to part ways with offensive coordinator Mike Fliegelman. Fleegs, how you doing, my man?
What's up, EJ? Thanks for having me amidst all this. Just you can count on the Jets for one thing, which is just constant chaos, even when they've not been playing for almost a month.
It is chaos, and again, who would have thought that we're almost at February, and now the Jets may not have their first actual in-person interview with somebody until February. That is a reality, possibly, because this week we'll see how the rest of the week goes. Maybe they get Frank Reich in here, prior to that, but The season ended in January 4th, and the head coach is still here, and now they're starting this thing completely from scratch. How surprised were you by the decision to move on from Tanner Engstrand, and how surprised were you with the developments that we've seen with this idea that they were looking at a new play call to come in, but that they may potentially keep Engstrand as the coordinator? How surprised are you by all this?
I mean, I'm not surprised by the developments of today once we got the reports from over the weekend that they were looking at bringing in Frank Reich. But after the season ends, when there was no really, I don't think, decision made internally, like Aaron Glenn, it was never considered in that building to let him go. And one guy that we never heard any buzz about was Tanner Engstrand. And so when other coaches are on the outs, obviously they already had a defensive coordinator position open. Yeah. I just assumed, okay, Engstrand is safe and they're going to move forward with him. He's the one guy, and I just heard you mention it. If I could point to Chris Banjo and the special teams, they did an amazing job this year. Engstrand, early in that season, offensively, listen, the quarterback stinks. I was not on board with bringing in Justin Fields, thought he was terrible. But I saw some elements of a functioning offense, at least the way the game was called, in the way the opening drives were scripted. You know, I saw little pieces that, okay, there's slight promise there. Nothing, grand or spectacular, but a little bit of the slightest reasons for encouragement in a team where the rest, again, if you're looking for encouragement with the Jets, it is a barren wasteland. There's nothing. I saw something with the offense. Like, it helps that the offensive line finally stayed healthy for a season, but the run game was pretty effective when Breece Hall was out there. And like you said, early in the year, receivers were getting open, not just Garrett Wilson before he got hurt. Guys were open for Justin Fields. He just couldn't get the ball to them. I don't know how you can judge Tanner Engstrand on the last few games with Brady Cook. Brady Cook is not an NFL quarterback. There's no way he should have ever been on the field. Now, unless he was part of the determination last offseason to say, all right, I want Fields, or I don't want to draft a quarterback, even day 2 or day 3, and Brady Cook is the guy he identified as an undrafted free agent, maybe that was on him a little bit. Right. But it doesn't seem like that's the case. And then again, for this to happen 3 to almost 4 weeks after the fact, the one advantage you could have had if you made this decision earlier was to get a head start on interviewing and talking to candidates before guys took other jobs, and not just other offensive coordinator jobs. There are guys who are going to be position coaches and assistants and other spots lower down the totem pole that are going to look at this Jets job. There's not a person in the world who can honestly tell you that a year from now they think Aaron Glenn is going to be the head coach. Who is taking this job to call plays when you don't have a quarterback, you don't really even have a path to a functioning NFL quarterback, and you have almost no chance of surviving and having your job a year from now? There's no appeal to this. That's why I think if they can get Frank Reich, that's best case scenario. That's lucky. That's a guy who's done it before. It's obviously there's no long term, there's nothing to build on, but maybe you just get an adult in the room that somehow accidentally teaches somebody how to be professional and be part of a competent organization, and that can linger on to what comes next. I mean, Frank Reich has been the offensive coordinator and play caller for some good teams. We all remember the Eagles in 2017, so he's done the job before, but that is who the Jets are looking at. Like, any hot, young, upstart candidate is not going to go near the Jets job. They're going to have to look at the Frank Reichs and Wink Martindales of the world, guys who are kind of out of flavor and on their last legs, and we know they can do the job, but there's not maybe the upside there, and there's not the excitement for, hey, this could be our guy for the next 5, 10, 15 years that you have with a lot of these other coaching candidates. I mean, they are as undesirable a job as I've ever seen in the NFL. Like, even the Browns can say, hey, Shador showed you something last year. If you think he's the guy, go work with him. The Jets have nothing.
And there's some coaches and there are some people in the league circles, there are probably some who thought that he was good at Colorado, and they don't know why. Maybe he fell in the draft because, maybe they're not so tied into, I guess, whatever was happening in an interview with Brian Daboll, right? So, they have at least a young quarterback. So, okay, there's something there. I mean, you saw Brady Cook play. He looked nothing like Shador Sanders in a bad way. So, it's what you have here. And I want to stay on Frank Reich real quick because that's the aspect of this that also is frustrating for me. You're right. Frank Reich has called offenses and done a good job in the past, but we are kind of years away from when we've seen that version of him. The Carolina situation was as bad as it could be. I understand that he had an owner who was a maniac. Guess who he's going to now? He's not coming to a place where he has a better ownership situation or a better head coaching situation or anything like that, or a staff situation. And then also for me, even beyond that, again, his last years in Indy, were kind of a little shaky as well. What is the upside, or what is the potential you feel like for a Frank Reich offense given the team that they have?
And listen, it's not great. I just think that you have a small chance. And again, the last time he had a really good offense, obviously Philly was great in that year.
Yeah.
And there were moments in Indianapolis, and there was a lot of quarterback turmoil in Indy that I'm sure a lot of it had nothing to do with the head coach. Obviously, we know the Andrew Luck situation, and then Wentz, and almost making the playoffs with him, and then actually making the playoffs with, I guess we thought at the time, washed up Phillip Rivers, but when he just came back and did what he did, maybe not. That one's hard to classify now. I don't think the upside is very high. I just think when you're the Jets with this situation right now, when anybody else is going to look at that, you get a request, the Jets want to talk to you about being the offensive coordinator. Do you want to sit down with Aaron Glenn? People are going to look at that and say, hell no. I mean, I'm sure there was Tanner Engstrand, good for him. I would imagine in those conversations that happened with Aaron Glenn the last few days, he probably went all Pete Franklin style and just said, fire me. Like, what? Why am I going to be here? I'm going to have the offensive coordinator title, but I don't get to call any of the plays, and you're going to bring in somebody to run this offense? Like, it's just, it is such a mess, and that's the really sad part. Frank Reich can maybe be functional and could be that grown up, and maybe you won't have the off the field nonsense or some of the weekly press conference gaffes that the Jets are known for, and that bar is the floor, but that might be the Jets' ceiling right now, because I don't even know who you're giving Frank Reich. The veterans out there are not appealing, and if let's say he loves somebody as a quarterback that they draft not the first round, maybe he's a big Trinidad Chambliss fan, ends up coming out, or whoever it is, pick your quarterback from this very murky class after Fernando Mendoza. Say he's like somebody with their second round pick or a third round pick, fourth, whatever it is, and you see some signs with that guy. If the Jets fire Aaron Glenn, or when the Jets fire Aaron Glenn, at the end of the season, like he's not coming back for a year 3, and that new head coach isn't going to want to keep even somebody as established as Frank Reich as his offensive coordinator to continue developing that quarterback. He's going to want to bring in his own guy, his own staff. And if the Jets, which they've done before, God knows Woody Johnson has done this so many times with different positions, hey, I want you to be my head coach, but I'd like you to keep this guy on staff in this role, because it's always been this mishmash of broken timelines and guys not on the same page. And I was out on Aaron Glenn quickly. I never would have hired him just because I don't like defensive coaches for the most part, and I really don't like the older defensive coaches because they just seem to be too old school. Like Mike McDonald, Mike Vrabel breaking through. They're a little younger. Vrabel also didn't go the traditional defensive coordinator path. He just happened to be an excellent defensive player. Mike McDonald was that guy, defensive coach, but he mixed in college experience, and he's younger. So, you and I are people, when we watch the games, we embrace a little more of the new school thoughts, going for it on fourth down, being aggressive. And I was absolutely pigeonholing Aaron Glenn, just assuming, he's older. He's going to be one of these old school guys. And then when we watched him early on in the season, it seemed like that was mostly the case, that just antiquated ideas. I think he's more, and the Jets even said they were looking for this. Mike Tannenbaum was emphasizing this. I thought it was a mistake in the search. The X's and O, the leadership instead of the X's and O's, when this is kind of an X's and O's era of NFL football. The leadership obviously matters, but it's just this whole now disaster of a situation they've put themselves in, where there's everybody going into that building next year. If you're the young quarterback that gets drafted, somebody's going to be in your ear of just survive, do the best you can. This coach is out next year, and the defensive coordinator, they're in the same boat. They can, they interviewed these 8 candidates, and now half of them are off the board already, taking other jobs. It's just I don't know. I don't even know what the selling point is for this franchise, for anybody, an offensive coordinator position. Again, let's say they get Frank Reich and they fill that. Who wants to be the quarterback coach for this team? It's just they're picking from the shallowest end of the pool in terms of candidates. Like this is not a job anybody wants. I can't blame them. It is just like the Jets have been a disaster for a long time, and they've had their fair share of messes. I don't think it's ever been this bad, at least not in our lifetimes.
It's bad, and it's funny because I always say this, and we're the same age, so we would say you'll totally understand. Like when people do the Jets, they're always the worst, they're always the losing organization. I'm like, I'm sorry, that's not the Jet organization I was introduced to. Like I became a Jets fan in like 97, 98. My second year of watching the Jets play football that I remember, they were in the AFC Championship game, and they were a pretty good team. And then they had Herm Edwards, and like sometimes they'd make the playoffs, sometimes they wouldn't. And then they had Rex Ryan, and then they went to the AFC Championship game twice. Like at my childhood, my kid years, they weren't the best team. They weren't winning championships, but they were okay. Like they were
they were a competent organization for a good 12 or so years. So again, I'm like just like you. So I remember '98, and then obviously '99. I know exactly where I was when Vinny went down. Then the outgrow. You're going into Herm. Like Herm had, especially relative to what the Jets franchise is. Herm had a lot of success.
Definitely.
The Doug Bryant game is all on Herm, an absolute disaster. But they were in the playoffs multiple years. They had playoff victories. Mangini made the playoffs year 1 and year 3. If Brett Favre doesn't get hurt, I still think they win the Super Bowl. If Brett Favre,
me and agree on that. I was talking about that.
Obviously, the first 2 Rex years and going to the AFC Championship game. This is why I used to defend Woody Johnson, saying like, hey, like this 10-year run of his first 10 years of owning the Jets is pretty good for most franchises, and it's exceptional for the New York Jets.
Right.
Now, what I didn't know is as soon as he fired the last Parcells holdover and Mike Tannenbaum, they'd be the worst organization in North American professional sports. But no, you're right. Like that's when people say same old Jets, to me, no. Like same old Jets from when I was 7, 8 years old until into when I'm a college sophomore or junior, the Jets were a normal franchise. Like they weren't great. Obviously, they didn't win. They didn't go to a Super Bowl, but they were not this national laughingstock. People always look to make fun of the Jets, but it wasn't as easy as it is right now. I mean, how could you push back on anything negative anybody says about the Jets right now? Nothing.
I always say the same thing.
One of their best players wants out. Breece Hall, they're going to have to franchise tag him. This guy's never agreeing to a contract with the Jets, and he shouldn't. Garrett Wilson, I wonder if there's a part of him that regrets that extension he signed last year.
And I'm surprised, and I'm wondering if he regrets today because it's been said, we don't know what's true enough. It's been said that he's been supportive of Aaron Glenn, that he's been supportive of the Jets, and that he wants to be here when things get right. So that word has gotten out there. Maybe it's because he's being paid handsomely, so he feels like, hey, put that out there. I don't care as long as I'm getting my bread. But I wonder, today,
everybody eventually, Leonard Williams was that guy, and Quinnen Williams was that guy, and then eventually you just can't do it anymore.
Yeah, and I wonder today that's where Garrett is today, where maybe even after the season ended, he said, you know what, I like what I'm seeing from Engstrand. I like I know it seems like he has a good relationship with Glenn. Like it was a bad year, but I'm locked in. I want to fix this thing. I wonder if today he's like, oh, the emperor has no clothes. This is I have signed up for something that is not going in the right direction at all. I think he may have real concerns just because I don't know how you look at this situation and see this as anything other than completely dysfunctional. It's not like I said earlier, there's no way Aaron Glenn figures this out with this situation. Could he have figured it out to me if he would have kept Engstrand, if he wants to call defensive plays himself, fine, or he brings in a Wink Martindale? Is there a scenario where, okay, next year is better than this year? Yeah, I think there's a scenario that's possible. Let's see what the quarterback is. Let's see what they do with the rest of the roster. They have a ton of cap space. There's no way this is happening now. There's no way you're going to tell me when everybody's been hired, when now you're just beginning an offensive coordinator search. You may not be able to sign Wink because now he thinks he wants to call the plays. Like, you're not going to tell me with this level of dysfunction, I know it's still early in the offseason, but the fact that you had a plan and just you've been so skittish that 3 weeks later, you're like, you know what, change the whole plan, we're doing something totally different. To me, you don't have a clear conviction of what you stand for. You have no clear conviction of what your vision is for the organization. That's why I'm out. That's why I'm like, what is there to stand on with this guy anymore? He doesn't even know where the direction of the team is going at this point. He literally, a couple weeks ago, we were like talking about Engstrand coming back and just a DC search. Now we have basically an empty staff. Basically, there's nobody on the coaching staff at this point. We're hiring now 7 or 8 guys to fill all these spots. 5 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is, 3 weeks after this whole thing began. It's a joke.
No, it's horrible. And again, for the guy who wanted to stand up there or sit at the podium and say, trust us, we have a plan, well, then you can't go fire the offensive coordinator a few weeks later when you've just been sitting around for the last almost month. Like, this could have happened. It would have been a hard sell back then, but at least the timeline would have made sense. Now you just wonder, like, what triggered this? What in the last few days made Aaron Glenn all of a sudden decide, hey, you know what, Tanner Engstrand was part of the problem. He's the reason Brady Cook couldn't succeed in some of these NFL games when there's not, again, another person outside of maybe Brady Cook and his family that thinks he could have succeeded in those spots. It's just, I think the biggest concern, if you're a Jets fan, and I know this is hard to root for, I don't want to make this like a pro tanking thing in January of the season before, but I think the scariest thing that could happen for the Jets is if Glenn calls plays, let's say it's him or Wink, that's somebody who's experienced calling plays for a defense either way. They spend the cap space on just adequate NFL players, nothing special, but we've seen it before where teams spend a lot of money and you get that boost in year one. If they go the veteran quarterback route, I don't really know who this guy is, but if they stumble their way, last place schedule, and assume Frank Reich is the offensive coordinator, to 6 wins, and 3 or 4 of them are really ugly, kind of like the wins this year. There's nothing impressive about it, but sometimes NFL teams accidentally find themselves at 5-12 or 6-11 instead of the 3-win season. Is Woody Johnson the kind of guy who would try to sell himself or his fans on, well, that's progress. If you go from 3 wins to 6 wins, you doubled it. And now, you're also maybe not picking in the top 3 or 4 in next year's quarterback class. So you got to hope that even in a loaded class that the teams in front of you are either willing to make a dumb trade, which we haven't really seen in recent memory. The Giants all their times trying to trade up. Teams in the top in the last few years haven't traded out of these spots. It's just the worst thing that can happen for the Jets is that 6-win season out of the top 5. Woody keeps Glenn, because even if Woody didn't keep Glenn at that point, it's bad. They're in a no man's land from a coaching standpoint and from a roster standpoint. Maybe the GM has something. It's really hard to know. Last offseason, every move worked out pretty much as a disaster, but there is a chance that's because of coaching. Like, all we know about Muji on his own is the trades look pretty good. You and I also could have said yes to the Colts offer when, like, you saying that right? 2 first-round picks?
First-round picks, yeah. Send them over.
Like, this year and next year, right, because I probably at that point would have taken one of the 2 for a guy who quit on the Jets, then they paid him. But it's just, I feel bad for the long-time Jets fan because I even when NFL situations are kind of doom and gloom, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. The Titans' ownership has been an embarrassment, almost on par with the Jets the last 5 years. Firing John Robinson, who built a good team. Firing Mike Vrabel, who is now going to the Super Bowl in a week and a half and has a chance to win it in his first year with his new team. But they have Cam Ward, a guy who you and I are, forget selling stock on. Not only are we not selling our stock, we're buying more even after his rookie year. I don't care what the numbers say. I watched the guy play. He has now an offensive coordinator in Brian Dable, that news today. As long as he doesn't get the Raiders job, that has developed quarterbacks before. So even in these darkest situations, I can see the light, and I can try to sell you on it. I don't see it for the Jets right now because, 2027, the dream out there, and I would bend over backwards and do backflips to try to have this guy be my head coach in Mike Tomlin, who I still think is one of the best coaches in the NFL. I think the Steelers fans turned on him, and I think they picked the wrong guy. That roster, ever since Kevin Colbert retired, has gone downhill and downhill. They gave him a 40-plus-year-old quarterback this year, who he wanted, but then said, go play with one wide receiver. Similar to the Jets. Go play with Garrett Wilson. If he gets hurt, well, that's it on the position.
Yeah, exactly.
Mike Tomlin's not working for Woody Johnson. And then this dream of getting Arch Manning, number 1 overall. I would be stunned if everything we know about the Manning family they let Arch end up with Woody Johnson and this dysfunction with the Jets. What they need somehow is, and it's not impossible, it's just unlikely, but it's not impossible because James Dolan did this.
Yeah.
Woody Johnson has to somehow just say, all right, I'm done getting involved. Pick a president. Now, this would be the difference between Leon Rose and whoever the Jets hire. Whoever the Jets bring in, this has got to be somebody who's done it before. If not as a GM, as a head coach, some kind of success in the NFL. If he can fully step away and give that guy total control over everything related to football in 2027, then maybe they have a chance. But even then, you're looking at best case scenario for a team that hasn't made the playoffs in 15 years. Best case scenario is 2028. If you hit on a rookie quarterback next year and Muji's reshaping this roster, and then a real czar of football comes in next year, like I don't. What's a reason for a Jet fan to watch them play football next year? I can't think of one.
To watch them play football, none. I think I think it's similar to the for a long time the Knicks when it was like hang the banner cap space. I think draft picks is what you're hanging the banner for the Jets right now. It's hang the banner, 4 first-round picks next 2 years, and you just got to hope that with those players that come in, that begins, or whatever they use those picks for, if they end up getting traded or flipped or whatever, that draft capital gets used to build whatever the next generation of the Jets are going to be. But where things stand right now, I totally agree. They're completely bleak. Real quickly before I get you out of here, Fleegs, you've been phenomenal. It's been great to have you on the show. 2 things on Marvel. First, I want to ask you about the Daredevil trailer that dropped today. Season 2 coming for Daredevil Born Again on Disney Plus. Now, I'll say, because I people were excited about it. I will admit I did see that one at Comic-Con. That was when they showed it at New York Comic-Con. I'm not sure if you had seen it yet or anything. But what were your thoughts on the trailer and the fact that we have it coming out just in March?
I'm so excited. I mean, like we knew Jessica Jones was in it, but still the shot of her boots showing up, like that's exciting. I mean, the Netflix Marvel days, especially early on, like that was a time. Like if you missed it, it's hard to try to tell people how exciting that was at the time with Daredevil, Jessica Jones, all for the build-up for the Defenders, which then was disappointing. But
yeah,
whatever. With all that we know about the creative differences behind the scenes, all the shakeups, now that everything's back on track and this one creative team plans season 2, like I am so excited and hyped and confident that this season of television is going to deliver for us. Mm-hmm. I kind of like that it's an 8-week rollout. Like I wanna live with this every week. It's good to mix it up. Like Wonder Man will be a binge drop, and that's fine at times too. But like I love that we're gonna get to live with Daredevil for pretty much 2 months. And just thinking week to week, if it's as good as I think it can be and is going to be, then it's to kind of show that, I want to think about it and discuss the episode after every week leading up to the next one. I have full confidence, like, of anything coming out for Marvel TV or movie in the next year or two, my confidence is probably highest with Daredevil Born Again Season 2.
Wow. And look, I really like Season 1, and even though it felt a little disjointed because of the creative shift, I actually thought the first part of the season was still actually pretty good. Like what the first creative.
I agree. It was still good.
It was still good. Was it as good as the Netflix show? No, but it was good. And then once you got to then the last 2 episodes when you see the new team take over and like, oh my God, okay, now if this direction we're going, this is going to be a lot of fun. So I agree. I absolutely cannot wait for a Daredevil Born Again. What are your expectations for Wonder Man coming out tonight? Excited? Thumbs up, thumbs down? How you feel? I've heard good things.
I'm excited and I'm hopeful because we've heard good things, and the binge drop worried me a little bit because Marvel tends to do that more when they don't believe in something. But I mean, the reviews are off the charts. How could something with Yahya and Ben Kingsley really be that bad? Like even if the story isn't great, you're telling me every moment with the 2 of them on screen isn't going to be captivating and fun, and I mean what they can both do. And we've obviously seen this with Yahya and his non-Marvel roles, and we've seen this with Ben Kingsley, especially in the MCU. Like, I think this could be a real good, strong mix of comedy and drama. I'm not expecting it to tie into the MCU at large all that much, and it doesn't have to. Some of these TV projects, let me just have fun. Let me, for 8 episodes, tell me a good story about Wonder Man, and let me just enjoy it. If it can tie in, great. If not, I don't need it. So I'm cautiously optimistic, especially with these reviews helping that. It might not be the best thing I've ever seen, I think I'm going to have a good time watching Wonder Man over the next couple of days.
Yeah, I'm excited about it, man. I didn't know what to expect from the initial reactions, but people have now seen it and they've said it's really good. And Yahya Abdul-Mateen, I agree, it's awesome. Ben Kingsley's awesome, and it feels like Marvel seems to have had its most success when they're in this Infinity Saga era. Outside of Eternals, it seems like they've had their most success with projects that have felt less superhero-y. So people really like the New Avengers in part because a lot of that was not as superhero-y, as tropey as some of the other things. People like, obviously, WandaVision. People have like Loki. And what I've heard is that this is kind of in that same ilk. So if that's the case, then I feel like people are going to like this. I'm probably going to like this as well because it seems like they're going away a little bit from some of the things you would expect from your typical superhero movie or television show. So I'm really excited about it. People who don't know, man, like, this is like a Mike Fliegelman conversation I have with him anytime I'm at the station. It's talking about the Jets, him telling me all the things they've done wrong, and him being right about everything, and me being like, damn it, I have nothing to say. What else can I say? They've screwed up everything. And then it's them giving me the takes on Marvel. This is how it always goes, man. Fleegs is the man. He's awesome. The work he does over at WFAN, both hosting and producing, he's the best. One of the best guys there. So Fleegs, has been great having you on, man. Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, EJ. Always great talking sports with you and what we do there. There's not a ton of people who can get as deep into the genre stuff, superhero stuff, as you. Like you're the, when there's a new Marvel or DC thing, that one of the best things was like, all right, I can't wait till I walk out into that newsroom and see EJ, so we can recap it because it's out and it's day one, so I know we watched it. This has been a blast. Love what you're doing with the 40 days and 40 nights. Continued success. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks, man. Take care, Fleeks. That's awesome. Boy, this has been a fire episode of 40 Days and 40 Nights. If you're watching this live, night 12 of 40 Days, 40 Nights, you guys are getting a treat. You got my man Fleegs coming in, not just giving you the Jets takes. What you saw, Fleegs, he knows this organization in and out. And he's got good instincts on kind of where the tea leaves are going and kind of foreseeing the struggles, right? I tend to be more of the optimistic Jet fan, which is why today is so difficult for me to sit here and say, you know what? I tried. I can't see it with Aaron Glenn. I wanted him to succeed. He's a former Jet. I think he did a great job when he was in Detroit. He seems to be like a very likable guy. Like everything I've watched and read about him, I wanted it to work out. It's hard for me to admit today this thing ain't gonna work out. But like I do every time I host on the Fan, I always keep it 100. I always keep it 100. That's what I always say, right? 2 rules, right? I come to the mic. Number 1, I'm ducking no smoke. Number 2, I'm keeping it 100. So I got to keep it 100. I don't think this Aaron Glenn thing's going to work out. This thing looks like a mess. Fliegelman told me last year this thing was going to be a mess. Fleegs told me Justin Fields was not going to work out. He's a Jets fan. He supports the team. He's rooting for the team. He's not like he's trying to tell me bad news. He's just calling it like it is. He's telling me this front office ownership group has no clue. So far, it's like they've had no clue. Now, I think Muji's done a good job with the trades and some of the things he made. I like the first round pick. I like the first 2 picks actually he made in the draft this past year, Mason Taylor and Membu. But Fleece he has a good instinct. He has a good feel. So I wanted to talk to him today. I wanted to get a feel for. And like I know he's gonna agree, but I'm like, am I crazy to be like this thing ain't gonna work out and this thing looks bad? And you heard him. He said it's about as bleak as it's ever been for the New York Jets. That's what he said. That's someone who lives and dies with the Jets. That's someone who knows the Jets history as well as anybody. And he says it's as dark as it's ever been. It's hard to argue right now. The one thing I point to, and like I said, hang the banner, 4 first-round picks in the next 2 years. That's what you got. That to me is what you say. You say, hey, listen, we got all these first-round picks, and we got some second-round picks as well. And you just hope. You're just hoping against hope that this draft class that comes up next 2 years, you're able to draft true difference makers that ain't going to be this coach. It just isn't. But for the next coach that comes in, that you would have drafted true difference makers that could usher in a new generation of Jets football that the fans can actually be proud of. Similar to kind of what we saw. We don't give enough respect really to the Eric Mangini era of the New York Jets and kind of the end of Herm Edwards and how much that set up the Rex Ryan years. They drafted a lot of players during that era that ended up being staples on those Rex Ryan defenses that were so great, like a David Harris, like again, so many of the guys on that defense. Like you gotta hope that that's gonna happen again. That you say, you know what, Darrell Revis, obviously, like okay, they ain't gonna work with this coach, but you know what, you got all these picks here. We'll draft hopefully some good players. Hopefully Glenn won't screw up these draft picks. He didn't last year, so I mean, it seems like he may have a good feel for that. I don't know if it's all Muji or him, but their first 2 picks, I think hit on. So, okay, let's draft some good players this year. Let's draft some good players next year. And then the coach will probably be different next year, but let's hope that coach now comes in and the cupboard's not bare. That, I think, is your only hope. And you hope that then that next coach comes in, that guy has a clue, and they figure it out. But the problem is, in all of this, you could say, okay, well, we can fire Glenn, and then we move on and say, oh, ding dong, the witch is dead, Aaron Glenn is gone, and now things are going to be okay. Well, Woody Johnson is still the final boss. And at the end of the day, the final boss of ineptitude is not going anywhere. There's no way to get rid of him. So as long as the final boss of ineptitude is still around, then it's hard to see the bright side of what's happening with the New York Jets, man. It's just tough. But shout out to my guy, Fleegs. Again, brings it as he always does. Shout out to Maggie Gray earlier in the show, bringing it as always. Like I said earlier, some fun conversations about the Bills. She gave a little update on what to expect, hopefully, from Maggie and Perloff coming up soon. Sounds like she's really excited about it. So those that have been bugging me about it, texting me, tweeting me, getting in the comment section over here, or both on YouTube and on X and on Instagram, where we're streaming live here, getting on saying, hey, what's going on, Maggie and Perloff show? What's going on, Maggie and Perloff? I keep saying, hey, that's not that they doing their thing. I'm letting them do their thing, and then whatever they announce, you guys will hear, and you heard it here. It seems like something's coming, so just stay patient. But I think you got a fun update if you've been following me and you're on this stream, in part because of the great team we put together at Maggie and Perloff, not just with Maggie and Andrew, but also of course Andrew Bogish, Mandy Rodriguez, the starting 5 of Infinity Sports Network, because we were the morning show. I guess technically Boyle was the starting 5 because he was, I don't know what you would call him. He was the beginning. The game started, I guess, when he was on, because it was after hours. But you know what I mean. For the morning show, for the day slot, the starting 5 of Infinity Sports Network, I thought it was us crew. I thought we did a phenomenal job. So keep it locked in with Maggie and Perloff, and keep paying attention to see what they got coming up, because I think it's going to end up being a whole lot of fun. But let's keep the ball rolling, man. Other news get out here before we get out of here. So Darian Mensah and Duke, they reached a settlement. The Miami host, they reached a settlement today. Miami also hosted Darian Mensah at the university today. So here's how this all went down. So Darian Mensah, he was a star quarterback with the Duke Blue Devils last offseason. He was at Tulane, and he signed kind of what was considered kind of the first of its kind, a 2-year NIL agreement to go to Duke. It was for $8 million, which at the time was kind of being touted as a record. It was a record that probably was broken the next day, because it's almost like with the NFL quarterbacks now, or in the NFL, it's like, oh, that guy's making this. Okay, the next guy's gonna get that and a penny, or that and a quarter. So Carson Beck may have got more than Mensah once that deal got signed or whatever. But nonetheless, he had signed a deal that was almost record breaking, and was definitely groundbreaking from the fact that it was a 2-year agreement. He would be at Duke for 2 years, and it was for a total of $8 million. Well, he still, despite playing this year, wanted to transfer and entered the transfer portal. Duke at first wouldn't let him enter the portal, but then legal got involved. They eventually had to let him into the portal, but then he couldn't actually sign anywhere or enroll anywhere because they were suing him, saying that he was violating his NIL agreement. They all ended up coming to a situation where there was a looming court date that was happening. That was going to be later this month. They were able to settle this lawsuit that Duke filed before that court date. So now that court date's not a factor. The agreement paves the way for Mensah to sign with Miami, where he was on a visit with Duke star wide receiver Cooper Barkate earlier today. So I want to give you guys a chance to read the statement that I'll read for you guys as well regarding what happened with Mensah and where things stand as of today, as soon as I can get this up, because this is all not in the right order. Here we go. All right, so this was a statement from Mensah, and you can read it here. Try to enlarge it so it's not so crazy, or at least enlarge the parts that make sense. All right, so here, so I'll just read the part here that I thought was most important to me, which was, we are committed to fulfilling all promises and obligations to our student athletes when we enter into contractual agreements with them. We expect the same in return. Enforcing those agreements is a necessary element of ensuring predictability and structure for athletic programs. It is nonetheless a difficult choice to pursue a legal action against a student and teammate. For this reason, we sought to resolve the matter fairly and quickly. So that is why Mensah is now gone, because they initially filed a lawsuit. Duke now saying, listen, we felt like it was the right to ensure that, contractual agreements are met. And when they're not, we expect, that we're going to have to stand up for ourselves in that sense. But obviously, we're filing a lawsuit against a student. And this is not maybe the greatest look. So we're moving on. So here's what I'll say, man. On just the state of college football front, Duke is ducking the smoke when it comes to this murky gray area of the limitations that come with these college football players being student athletes and not employees when it comes to these NIL agreements. Because Duke was claiming with the lawsuit that the NIL agreement that Mensah signed meant that they owned his rights. Apparently that was in the contract, that the NIL agreement was an exclusive deal to Duke. Now, the thing about this thing that gets murky is because, again, NIL is not technically supposed to be, especially back then, because remember, this is before the House settlement. NIL is not the school paying you to be an employee. This is someone who wants to give you some kind of endorsement deal to use your likeness. I use in quotation marks very heavily. They give you money and tell you, go to this place and we can fund, your whatever. We can, use your likeness, give you money to push some energy drink or something. Or again, a lot of times they're no-show jobs. A lot of times they're not even doing anything. That is what NIL is for the majority of these players. There are some guys like a Travis Hunter who will be in a KFC commercial or something like that. But like most of the time, like that is what you're seeing. But it's a murky area because, again, technically that's not a deal that Mensah signed with Duke. That's a deal he signed with, I guess, whatever the NIL collective was. I assume it was NIL collective for Duke. That's different than the university. So if he's saying, all right, well, I'm leaving the school, whatever. And that's what these kids have been doing. That's what these guys have been doing. They have signed these deals, saying they're not binding. I signed to a collective or I signed to this deal. It doesn't mean I'm not breaking my letter of intent in any way or breaking my my scholarship. That's a year-to-year thing. I'm out of here. And most of the time, the school has nothing to really do because what are they going to do? It's a year-to-year agreement. There's nothing they can really do about it. This was a little different because this was a 2-year deal and it was for all this money. And I think they really wanted to kind of pin Mensah down and say, hey, listen, like you signed a 2-year deal and now you're bailing. Like we can't have this considering we own your rights in terms of the contract. And now Mensah, on the flip side, in theory, he could have decided, okay, well, I will then just enroll at Miami as a student and not take any NIL. You guys have my NIL right now. I can't imagine he's going to want to play for Miami just for the good of his heart. I know he's going to want to get a bag. So in theory, could he have done that? Yes, but that probably would have been an empty threat. But again, I say all this to say that this all speaks to the need for college football to fully and transparently come to grips with the notion that these are not student athletes and that your sham is over and you need to treat these people like employees or you do not have the kind of rights, exclusivity and all those things that come with typical employment. That's just the reality. So they were going to try to hold this thing up and, I think it all would have been mostly a stalling tactic because Mensah was approaching a deadline February 2nd, where if he didn't enroll before February 2nd, he couldn't participate in spring football for the Hurricanes, which is where he's expected to go. And that was kind of the thing they were holding over his head, and they came to some agreement. I assume it's essentially Duke got some bread out of the situation, and he's willing to get some money back. Where is he getting that money from? I'm sure. Everybody's like, oh, we know Miami's not in any way have anything to do with this settlement. They're not helping Darian Mensah in any way, which is like, okay, sure. But, they got some money out of the situation and they're going to move on with their lives. But a lot of this felt like theater for nothing. And Duke fans are furious. I actually was a little surprised at how mad they were. I would have kind of assumed that maybe they would have been more like, well, good riddance, this guy doesn't want to be here. Like, no, they wanted them to sue Darian Mensah. They wanted to fight this thing all the way through and get all this legalese straightened out. The student athlete part, what is NIL? They wanted to get it all straightened out. They did not want to see Darian Mensah leave. They did not want to see him go to Miami. That's for damn sure. And they didn't want to see them fold like this, but they ended up folding. They're probably getting a handsome bag in order to allow this thing to continue and for him to leave the Duke Blue Devils. But the whole thing is just, again, this college football is a sham. It's Dion is finding players for NIL money that he's technically not giving them. So how are you finding guys money when that money is allegedly coming from an NIL? This Duke Mensah thing, this statement, like, oh, there was a signed in the lawsuit, there's a signed agreement with Duke and Mensah, where it's like, well, no, technically, because we're doing this NIL thing, he signed a deal with a Duke collective or a collective of sorts that is related to Duke that said he had to go to Duke, but he doesn't want to play for Duke anymore, so he wants to break that contract. Is it right? Is it, honorable? Is it whatever? No, there is no honor in this sport. Like, I know we had Maggie Gray on. I really can't wait to have Andrew Perloff on at some point. I haven't had a reason, thank God, to talk about the Sixers or the Eagles because, he likes to gloat about those teams, and nobody wants to hear that. I joke, of course. I love my guy. But no, I mean, like, as he always says, like, it's a sport, it's a landscape that is based in corruption. The foundation is corruption. So this frustration, this anger about it being the Wild Wild West, it's like it's been the Wild Wild West. So this is yes, it seems chaotic, but welcome to college football. So I don't know. Listen, selfishly from Miami standpoint, and we'll get to Miami side of this, I do want to talk college football in terms of Miami and just on the field. But just in terms of like the football aspect of it from the larger sense, like I hope that at some point they decide finally, hey, listen, you know what, we have to figure out what is the deal with these players and the transfer portal and the NIL, and now that they're getting revenue, like, are we turning these guys into employees so we can lock them into contracts? Because I actually think, again, surprise, surprise, I actually think that would also be good for the sport. Like, I don't think it's best for the sport that, like, teams have just different quarterbacks and different players every freaking year. Is it killing the sport? Absolutely not. Like I said yesterday, like, all the money is still being made. The freaking what's the name is through the roof. All the ratings for the national championship game, the ratings for the college football playoff, that is not hurting the sport from that standpoint. But I think that there's an opportunity lost, just like there was when people were watching college basketball in the tens of millions for national championship games and Final Fours, and just like how people were invested more into the actual players on every team in college football. I still think there is an aspect that is a benefit. It's not like it's an end all be all, but there's a benefit to fan bases getting to really wrap their arms around young men who are part of their organization. It is an organization, part of their programs for 3-4 years. I think that there is value in that. You can not have that, and college football is going to be just fine. But I actually think it would help the sport. The fact that, like, fan bases will now be invested and they'll grow with certain players. And I actually think that it actually would create very interesting team building. I actually think it would be fun to follow. Like, guys being offered multi-year contracts and comparing that to guys offered 1-year deals and everything being out in the open. Like, it becomes more professional. But guess what? We love professional football. Like, we love the drama of team building and trades and player movement in the NFL and the NBA. Like, that's not a bad thing. It's one of the things that actually helps the sport. Free agency is one of the best things that happen to the NFL. Player movement is one of the best things that happen to the NBA. So, like, that, putting guardrails and putting rules behind it that we all can actually understand and actually then be more knowledgeable even about, like, just like what is allowed, what can happen, how teams can improve. Like, that all helps, I think, the growth of the sport. I think it helps people's interest in the sport. Again, can they go without it? Sure. It's college football. People want to just root for their school, root for their alma mater. It don't matter who's playing for Miami. As long as that orange and green U is on the side of that white helmet and that white and orange jerseys are going out there, people are going to cheer and they're going to be a fan. Same thing in Alabama. Same thing at Michigan. Same thing at Oregon. Same thing at Penn State. Whatever your school is. But I do think that, like, just for the sake of just not having the situation where, like, if you're a Duke fan, you probably feel really screwed. You're just like, bro, we just had this guy and he was supposed to, possibly change our whole program, and now he's gone. That sucks. That sucks for a certain fan base, right? Like, they were kind of hoping Darian Mensah could be there for Fernando Mendoza, a guy go to a school. He's a star quarterback, and he can maybe lift them with now Manny Diaz. Now, I can never imagine Manny Diaz coaching no damn national championship. But that's at least what they were hoping for. They are allowed to have that hope. Now they don't have it. But they don't have it. It's Duke. It's Duke's fault. Duke is part of this corrupt system that they are perpetrating by not perpetuating, rather, by not actually trying to fix it, by not actually saying, you know what, let's sit down and let's piece this thing together and figure out how do we make this fair for everybody, make them employees, give us some more exclusivity, and then we all enjoy the money that we're all being made and everybody goes away happy. No, they want to live in the corruption. They want to be able to steal a Darian Mensah from Tulane. And then they also complain when he then goes somewhere else. It's nonsense. It's a joke. It's crazy that a school that literally it's not a guy that they recruited. It's a guy that they got him. He left his NIL, whatever NIL deal he probably had to Tulane. I'm sure it wasn't as good as this one, but he had a deal somewhere else, and now he's just going to another school for a better deal and a better situation. Now you're suing. Like, again, you benefited from the rules being the Wild Wild West. So how you can't then turn around and then complain about it? Like I said earlier in the show, and it's a quoting. Obviously, it's quoting my guy Malachi Tony, who is quoting my guy Rick Ross. Gabos, game ain't based on sympathy. You can't be stealing team's quarterbacks and then turning around next year and then suing the guy because you're like, oh, how dare you leave us? You got him from someone else. It's like my mom always says back in the day, you get him how you lose him how you got him. When it came to if you got a boyfriend or you got a girlfriend or somebody and someone happen to be maybe being a little unfaithful or whatever, and you figure and then you realize the person ends up leaving you. You're like, oh, how did this happen? It's like, well, you lost him how you got him. If this person was already shown that they were willing to leave another agreement and leave a situation to go to you, why don't you think that they wouldn't go to a better situation somewhere else? I don't know. But again, that's a game that these schools and the college football landscape, they don't want to play that game. They don't want to go down that rabbit hole. What that means that they may have to go up now against a player union and go up against collective bargaining. They don't want any of that. They'd prefer to try to have these like singular situations and maybe sue in singular spots in hopes to get something out of it. But they don't want that smoke. Duke didn't want the smoke, and that's why we're here now. And they got some money out of it, but eventually they ended up caving. And Miami's going to potentially get everything they want out of this because now he's going to be able to enroll by the February 2nd deadline to play spring football. Now, on the football aspect of this is a massive win for the Miami Hurricanes if he does indeed sign. Now, of course, I've been doing this show live. You've seen me talking to Fleegs. You've seen me talking to Maggie Gray. I've also been entertaining you guys. I don't know if there's been a deal that's been signed that I don't know about, so apologies if I'm late on this. I'm just typing and searching real quick just to make sure he hasn't actually officially signed or anything. I don't see anything, so I'm going to assume that there has been a deal signed. He was on campus today. That did happen. So, and there's pictures out there. I mean, not just him, but also Cooper Barkate also was on campus, the wide receiver from Duke. So this is a massive win for the Miami Hurricanes if indeed he does eventually sign. And I'll actually post this picture here for you guys to see. So you can see both Cooper Barkate and Darian Mensah. You can see by former national champion and NFL first-round pick Mike Rumpf. Mensah was greeted obviously by the Miami staff when he came on. There's him right there. So this thing is this ball is rolling pretty fast here with what's going on with Darian Mensah. We'll of course have to keep following. He could sign today, tomorrow. It could be very soon, obviously, because there is a deadline for him to join Miami. It is college football, so I don't believe anything until something's signed. And even when something is signed, that doesn't necessarily mean that means something is happening. But that is the expectation that he could be joining the Miami Hurricanes very soon, and that's a big win for Miami. Mensah's a star. There's no question about that. I mean, he played on a team that obviously wasn't the greatest around him. In some of the games that I watched, there were moments where he flashed and he was incredible and he was making great plays. He wasn't playing on the greatest team, so sometimes he wasn't able to overcome that. But make no mistake about it, like, this is now the third year in a row where the Hurricanes have snagged arguably the best quarterback that was in the transfer portal. I mean, at least at the time. We know this year Fernando Mendoza was in hindsight, but first year Cam Ward, last year Carson Beck, now Darian Mensah. He threw for 3,900 yards, 34 touchdowns, just 6 picks. His star wide receiver, Cooper Barkate, who was also predicted to join the Miami Hurricanes with him. Again, they were on this trip together. He had 72 catches for 1,100 yards this year. So you're talking about taking Darian Mensah and then putting him with Malachi Toney, who is going to come into next year as maybe one of the candidates for the Heisman Trophy. Definitely going to come into next year as one of the best players in college football. Started as just a freshman this year, caught for over 1,000 yards. Now you add another 1,000-yard receiver in Cooper Barkate, who already has familiarity and comfortability with Darian Mensah. With the team that Miami has in place, they're losing a lot of guys. The offensive line is going to lose some people. Markel Bell, left tackle, he's left. CC Mauigoa is expected to be maybe a top 5 pick in this draft. And, of course, Inez Cooper, who's the right guard, also is going to the NFL. So they're going to have to fill some spots. They're replacing CC Mauigoa with a right tackle who is a 5-star recruit in Jackson Cantwell, who by some accounts is the #1 freshman in all of high school football coming in this year. So it could be a situation where we're not rebuilding, we're reloading. But there will be some changes on the offensive line. There's some guys that haven't played as much, but will now step into more full-time roles, even if they were big-time recruits. But just the structure, just how things look. You see the wide receiver room now with Toney and Barkate. You have now the quarterback with Mensah. Miami retained all of their running backs. So we saw Mark Fletcher's running the football during the college football playoff. Marty Brown's coming back. They kept somehow Gerard Pringle, the freshman who was electric during the regular season, didn't play much during the playoff. And Jordan Lyle, who was electric as a freshman the year before, but battled some injuries this year, he pulled out of the transfer portal as well. So they have still a very, very competent running back room. They have 2 receivers that caught for 1,000 yards last year. And they have a quarterback now who only threw for 4,000 yards. The Miami, it feels like we're entering a different era of Miami football. If there was any thought that this was going to be a 1-year flash in the pan deal with the Hurricanes, and considering just what college football is, and it's a year-to-year sport, and considering what Miami has been, where they have had not moments like this year where they get to the national championship, but moments where it's like, oh, okay, maybe the U is back, and then they fall off a cliff immediately. I think this is the time to really start taking them seriously, be like, oh, this is not one of the powers of college football. They could come in next year with arguably the best offense in college football. That actually isn't an overstatement, given the guys they have coming back. So that's going to be a really fun thing to follow for me as a Miami Hurricane fan. But as we just get ready for college football season, I expect the Hurricanes to be one of the teams that are going to be definitely a playoff contender. And I think we saw this season that when Miami's in the mix, it's just a lot of fun. They're the renegades of college football. They're kind of the outsiders. It annoyed the hell out of a lot of the college football establishment for Miami to be in this positioning in terms of the fan bases and the SEC and the Big Ten and all the junk that Miami talks and the swagger that they have. It's just fun. It's fun for everybody. It's damn sure fun for me. These last 20 years have been very difficult. Becoming a Miami Hurricane fan, knowing the history, and then immediately watching the team fall off and then not come back for 20 years. But rough. I think everyone's going to be in a good spot here. As Darian Mensah looks like he's closing in on soon coming a Miami Hurricane. So last thing we'll get here on the show before we get out of here, man. I want to thank you guys so much again for checking out 40 Days and 40 Nights. Again, like I say always, this is a live stream that you can catch every weekday, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m., 6 p.m. We do live shows talking sports, talking pop culture. Pop culture could be anything. You saw my guy Fleegs was here. We were talking Marvel. We got Wonder Man. I'm recording this while we're live. And, of course, if you listen to the podcast, which I'll get to in a second, we're doing this show right now at 7:42 Eastern Time in New York City. In less than 2 hours, you'll have Wonder Man out live on Disney+. So I'll probably watch some of those episodes tonight. But we're streaming live here on YouTube. We're also live on X, EJ_Stewart. Also be sure to check me out on Instagram as well, Action EJ, TikTok as well, Action EJ. Be sure to follow me on all those platforms. And we had some awesome guests. Maggie Gray from the Maggie and Perloff Show was here earlier. Had some great takes and some great commentary on the Buffalo Bills. Also gave a little bit of an update on what she's been up to and what her and my guy Andrew Perloff have been up to and what they may have coming down the pipe. And you heard it here first. Whenever something is ready to be announced, they will be back right here on 40 Days and 40 Nights to talk about it. So that's something that you're going to want to stay locked in. You're going to want to follow, obviously, their social media handles, at Andrew Perloff on X, at Maggie Gray on X. So it's pretty simple, very easy to follow them. And you're going to want to follow your boy, EJ Stewart, and you're going to want to follow New Generation Pod on X and New Generation Podcast on Instagram, because when, again, those things start to get rolling, that's going to be the place where you're going to want to hear what's going to happen. So Maggie was phenomenal. Mike Fliegelman from WFAN came on, Talk Jets. He was also phenomenal. If you missed all of that, you're watching live on YouTube or watching live on X. I think on X you can rewind. I'm not 100% sure, but definitely on YouTube. You can rewind back to the beginning of this ordeal, and you can catch all those interviews, of course. But if you can't watch, maybe you're on the go, maybe you're driving, maybe you're on a workout, whatever the case may be. You can also catch every episode of 40 Days and 40 Nights on my podcast channel. So New Generation Media, we're not just a YouTube channel. We also have a podcast network, New Generation Podcast Network. You'll catch that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search New Generation Podcast Network, and you'll get 40 Days and 40 Nights. Every episode so far is up there. Tonight's episode will also be up there. So if you want to catch those interviews from earlier in the show and just catch any part of the show that you missed, you can always catch us on the podcast channel, New Generation Podcast Network. And while you're there, be sure to give us a like. Be sure to give us 5 stars. And give us a written review if you can. All of that stuff helps the channel. All of that helps other people who you may want to support us and get more support for this entire channel and this entire ordeal that I'm doing with this 40 Days and 40 Nights. Maggie Gray was like, I don't know how the hell you're doing this. I'm like, sometimes I wonder how the hell I'm doing it either, but we're here, night 12 here. We're rocking here. It's been a lot of fun. I'm going to keep doing it. If you want that, again, that support to help, subscribing to the YouTube channel, subscribing to the podcast network, giving us a 5-star review, giving us a written review on the podcast channel, obviously commenting on the videos. All that stuff is super supportive and helpful. So again, be sure if you can, like the videos, give us 5 stars on the podcast. And if you miss anything, of course, you can check us on the podcast network. New Generation Podcast Network is what you will search. And finally, last thing we'll do before we get out of here, man. It's been a really fun show. This has actually been one of my favorite episodes so far. And we've had some great ones. This one has been definitely up there. There might be something big coming later this evening. I mentioned already, we got Wonder Man. That's also big. But something big on a different side when it comes to pop culture. We had a long conversation with my guy, Ray Jarvis, who's already chirping about wanting to come back. And I promise Ray, we will get Ray back on. Ray did a phenomenal job talking hip-hop, talking about the J. Cole and the album The Fall Off dropping February 6th, 2/6. And he was somebody who came on, had great insight, and upset some folks. Like I said, didn't expect Dreamville keyboardists to be in my Instagram feeds calling me an MFer and all this stuff, but that's what happened. I'm like, bro, I'm wearing a Dreamville shirt in this video. I didn't think I was disrespectful. I don't know why you're MFing me, but okay. But that was where it's at. I promise Dreamville, I promise J. Cole, I'm not a hater at all. I'm actually a huge fan, and I'm really excited because something appeared online that is making people believe that we may get music from J. Cole prior to anything coming from The Fall Off. So this actually dates back to something that came from a podcast, the Joe and Jada podcast. So Fat Joe and Jadakiss, they do a podcast together. And if I can, I want to see if I can find it. If I can't, I didn't think to grab the sound, but now I'm thinking, I should have it. If I can find it, I can. If I can't, then I think I did find it. So I'm gonna see if I can play this for you guys as much as I can. There probably are curses in this. And by the way, no, Maggie cursed. I don't have a hard and fast rule for cursing. I kind of operate the show as if it's a kind of a family-ish show. Apologies if there are curses in this. There definitely will be. It's Jadakiss talking. But if you ever hear a curse, again, apologies if you have children around or anything like that. If you're trying to keep this clean, this show is generally and primarily will be a clean show. But I do want to play this just because it actually is important to this news that we may be getting some J. Cole music later, because we know the fall off's coming on February 6th. But then Fat Joe and Jadakiss, they do a podcast, the Joe and Jada podcast, shout out to them. And they having a conversation where, just talking, arguing about, what's Cole's status is. The same argument we were having, by the way, me and Ray, not an argument, it's a conversation about, did he lose something by losing the beat? Not losing, but like bowing out, I guess, of the rap battle with Kendrick Lamar or whatever. They were having the same kind of back and forth. And Jadakiss has been very much supportive of J. Cole. And he's like, I don't care. The guy is an awesome rapper. He's an amazing rapper. We got to get over that, right? Which is a reasonable stance to take. I think both sides are reasonable stances. But he also then added something to this conversation that we did not know before. I want you to hear what Jadakiss had to say about stuff he had already heard from J. Cole.
Shit. Shout out to J. Cole. He got project coming out called The Fall Off, and he got a mixtape where he used some of the locks. He rhymed over Money, Power, Respect, and he rhymed over Can I Live. Killed them shit. So Cole is coming back in a major way.
Wait a minute. Mixtape? We heard about The Fall Off. We know that's coming. We're all excited about that. Nobody said anything about no damn mixtape. And to be honest, it's music. People hear things all the time. Artists have plans and then get rid of them or whatever. So you hear some things and you don't know what to take. But like, you hear a mixtape and like, wait, maybe Cole played them something that was a verse he played over the locks, but eventually will be something on The Fall Off. Like, we have heard nothing about no mixtape. This album that he's dropping is multiple discs. There's a disc 2 in terms of this album. So at the very least, it's a double album that he's dropping with The Fall Off. So we just said mixtape. I was like, what? He rhymed over Money, Power, Respect. He rhymed over Can I Live? Like, I need that yesterday. Now, I kind of took this with a major grain of salt when I heard this. Because I was like, I heard that there was a Kendrick Cole album. That they had like at least 5 or 6 songs that were amazing. And this was coming out any moment. Kendrick's sister put out a cryptic thing on Facebook that, get ready, it's coming. And everybody, all the Cole fans, all the Kendrick Lamar fans, we all came as one. It's crazy to think that at one time we were all brothers and sisters. And we were all really excited for this Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole EP, mixtape, album, whatever it's going to be. And nothing happened. We've heard these kind of things happen with artists. Oh, yeah, there was something coming out. I heard something that never actually made it to the light of day. So I heard a mixtape. I'm like, all right, he probably played something with Jadakiss. Maybe he did have like the concept of like a mixtape, but now the album's coming out, so we're only a couple weeks away, so they ain't gonna be no mixtape. But then again, folks started saying, well, wait a minute, like when he put up that notebook thing, remember, like way back in the day, he put up that J. Cole put up that notebook of what was coming for like the rest of his career and all of the projects that were coming out. He had like the off season, he had like all these different projects. And then part of the things that he had on there was something called It's a Boy. And I'm going to put this up so you can see it for yourself, as I'm kind of like producing and podcasting / live streaming at the same time, because that is how I roll. And that is the nature of this game here. I want you guys to see this. So this is what he put up. He put this up years ago. This is called the Fall Off Era. And he crossed off features, which he was doing all these features, where he was killing all these features that he was on. Then he had the Revenge of the Dreamers 3. That came out. We obviously saw that come out, and that was a smash success, obviously. And then he had the Off Season, which we remember the Off Season album, underrated album, I think. By the way, I think one of his best works. And then he had this It's a Boy, prior to the Fall Off. The Fall Off's obviously been teased for now years. But this It's a Boy thing, I know nobody knew what that was. But we just assumed when we heard the Fall Off, all right, well, I guess that It's a Boy thing isn't a thing anymore. And this was posted probably like in like 2021, 2022, something like that. Well, now here we are today hearing about some mysterious J. Cole mixtape that apparently Jadakiss had heard. And then we thought, well, he did mention something about It's a Boy. And then we started seeing, according to people, I wasn't there, so I can't speak for them myself, because I was not, obviously, I didn't go to Even. Even's the account, or I think Even is the streaming platform where they found this. But then they go and they find all these tracks that are posted for what looks like a J. Cole project. I'll show this right here, and I'll minimize this so you can see this. I'll put this on my right side here. This was a track list that showed up on the platform even earlier before it quickly came down. So there's like a SETI freestyle, Winter Storm freestyle, Golden Goose freestyle, Bronx Zoo freestyle. So there's these freestyles that were put up there. Songs apparently from J. Cole that were supposed to come out from this thing. You see the lock button because I guess it wasn't ready to release yet. And they quickly disappeared. And today we're doing this live stream January 27th. Tomorrow is January 28th. If you're a J. Cole fan, you know very famously because he had a song named after the date because it's his birthday. So now there's a lot of potential, a lot of excitement, a lot of people wondering, could we be seeing something at midnight where J. Cole is dropping a brand new mixtape on the platform even for his birthday, a little more than a week after before the fall off supposed to come out. Where there's smoke, there probably is fire. I tend to think that this is something that's probably gonna come down here. You had Jadakiss already saying that there was a mixtape that he heard and it sounds incredible. J. Cole rapping over money, power, respect. I need that yesterday. Then there was people remembering, wait, there was supposed to be an It's a Boy project that we never got before the fall off. And then this thing today where these tracks come up. No one heard them. They were locked, obviously, but they show up on even and then they disappear randomly. So this is Cole's season, no question about it. Cole, it seems like, is really, really trying to zero in on having this rollout be his best rollout of his career for the album that he has said is the most important one of his career. And it sounds like could very well be the last of his career. At least that's the way he's approaching it. Will it actually be the last album of his career? I tend to think no. I think he'll do some kind of music. Maybe it's collaboration. I know Jid had actually, someone mentioned that Jid said that, oh, me and J. Cole have a project together that we've done that is amazing. So I feel like we'll hear something from J. Cole again. Maybe he won't do solo projects anymore or whatever. I don't know. But I don't think that this is the last you'll hear a J. Cole project. But he's definitely pushing this as if this is his last ride. And he's going to sail away into retirement. It seems like he's trying to go out guns blazing. This will not be like the first time he's done this. Like he did this with Truly Yours when he was doing those EPs prior to albums coming out. And he's done the drop of mixtape prior to an album thing previously. So this is not the first time this is happening, but the fact that he's drum up this kind of support and this kind of anticipation, it speaks to his strength as an artist. It speaks to his body of work. It speaks to his fan base. I'm a part of that fan base that is extremely loyal and extremely just rabid for his music and for what he's been able to do for the culture. And it speaks to, I think, for those who do wonder, like, hey, like, how much did he lose in that like beef situation with Drake and Kendrick Lamar? The evidence that I keep seeing, it feels like he didn't lose much. That's the evidence I'm feeling. I can feel a certain way about it. I wish he did not do what he did. That's just my opinion. Again, if a Dreamville guy wants to MF me about it, whatever. But that's how I feel. What the impact of it is totally different. Like what I feel may not be how it actually impacts his career. I don't think, and now as we get closer and we're going to get the fall off, we have to hear the music. We got to hear this mixtape if it's a thing. We're going to have to hear eventually the fall off. I think it's going to sound incredible. If he does what he says he is planning to do, which is to put together the best collection of music of his career, and it's as fire as it is, considering the feverish nature in which people are anticipating this music and anticipating this project, it suggests to me that he didn't lose anything from that. The people that would be really, really angry or really upset or still holding that against him are folks that probably really weren't super J. Cole fans or didn't feel that strongly about him to begin with. They may be just overall commentators. Like they may be people just, who maybe we think have influence over folks, but I don't really think that they do. I really don't. I think that music fans kind of just listen to what I listen to, go by their own beat, and then their narratives are just their narratives. I don't necessarily feel like there are gatekeepers who tell people how to feel about certain things. So, which is why I feel like when people get so in their feelings about people disagree with him about music. I'm like, it doesn't really matter. This is music. But it seems like to me, J. Cole, man, this could be the most monumental moment of his career that we're seeing coming in just a couple of weeks. But now, maybe a couple hours, this is going to begin. So I'm excited. Mixtape J. Cole arguably is still the best version of J. Cole. I actually was listening to the warm-up a couple of days ago, just getting ready for the fall off and just wanted to begin that journey to his career. So I started listening to the warm-up a couple of days ago on a walk I went with my dog Lita. And like, yeah, this version of Cole, when he's in his backlist, when he's just barring you to death, is still the best version. I'm wondering how these bars about him being the best are going to hit after what happened with Kendrick Lamar. But I want to have it happen. I'd rather have it happen than not happen. I'd rather have that happen than him not make music or him do kind of what he did on For Your Eyes Only or something like that. And I don't hate For Your Eyes Only. Actually, I saw the title track came up recently. And the title track is amazing. And actually, also what came up recently was was Neighbors, because of what's been going on in Minnesota with the ice raids and these ice killings that have been happening, and kind of just people reminding people of like this was like this raid that happened in his house, and they were showing the music video. So it's underrated. I'm just saying that that's not the album I'm trying to hear. Right? The title track's incredible. Neighbors is one of my favorite J. Cole tracks ever. But still, I want to see him coming out and just smoking every track that he's on, showing that he is, in my opinion, the most talented rapper still. Greatest, best, hard for me to say after what happened with Kendrick Lamar. I was calling him that before that stuff happened. I will still say he's the most talented rapper alive. And I think what we heard from that Diss 2 Track 2 song was a great example. If this mixtape comes up and it's just J. Cole freestyles, I fully expect he will once again show you why he's the best rapper, or at least most talented rapper and most talented lyricist. And a couple of weeks with the fall off, man, I can't wait. That's going to be the place where we leave it here. So I want to thank you guys so much for checking out this edition of 40 Days and 40 Nights. Again, of course, make sure you support the channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube, New Generation Media. Make sure you follow me on social media where we're streaming live. @EJ_Stewart, Instagram @EJ. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast channel, New Generation Podcast Network, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you give us a 5-star review. Make sure you leave a review. Make sure you leave a comment. Watching the videos on YouTube. Make sure you comment on the YouTube videos. Make sure you give us a like on this video. All those things help support the channel. We greatly appreciate it. And that's it. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your night. Programming note for tomorrow. We will be doing the night version of 40 Days and 40 Nights a little early. Likely 5 p.m. I'm still deciding that, but likely 5 p.m. I'll be on with my man Dexter Henry and Brian Fonseca for their New York Post live stream of the Knicks game tomorrow between the Raptors and the Knicks. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. I'll be posting that stuff, details on my social media, so be ready for that. Thank you to Maggie Gray. Thank you to Michael Fliegelman. I'm EJ Stewart, man. I'll see you guys later. Take it easy.